I trusted my cousin with my business account while I had surgery. 6 weeks later, my money was gone. My equipment was sold, and my clients were told I quit. But he didn't know. My best friend is a paralegal, and he definitely didn't know about the texts he sent his girlfriend. I built my catering business from a single food truck parked outside a warehouse in Memphis, Tennessee, into a $312,000 a year operation. 7 years, 4 a.m. prep shifts, burned fingers I stopped counting. Nights I slept in that truck because I couldn't make rent and the commissary kitchen didn't have a couch. And the one time I needed help, the one time I trusted family, my own cousin drained my bank account, sold my equipment behind my back, and told every client I had that I'd shut down for good. Then he looked me in the eye and said I was never going to make it anyway. This is how I proved him dead wrong. My name is Janelle. I'm 34. I grew up in Whitehaven, South Memphis, in a neighborhood where everybody knew everybody, and your business was never just yours. My grandmother Ruth taught me to cook in her shotgun house kitchen on a stove that only had 3 working burners: smoked ribs, collard greens with ham hocks, peach cobbler with a crust she made from scratch every single time. She never measured anything. She'd say, "Your hands know, baby. Trust your hands." Ruth passed away when I was 19, pancreatic cancer, fast and cruel. After she was gone, cooking was the one thing that still felt like sitting next to her. After high school, I worked the line at a barbecue joint on Beale Street, then a hotel kitchen downtown. Double shifts, 6 days a week. I saved $11,000 over 2 years, living in a studio apartment off Lamar Avenue, eating rice and beans most nights, putting every extra dollar into a savings account at First Tennessee Bank. I didn't go out. I didn't buy clothes. I had 1 pair of work shoes I resold twice. At 27, I bought a used food truck for $8,500 cash from a retired taco vendor in Cordova. That truck was a disaster. The transmission was shot. The fryer needed replacing. The health inspector walked through it and handed me a list of 14 violations before I could even open the serving window. 14. I fixed every single one myself. I watched YouTube tutorials at midnight after working a 10-hour shift. I rewired the ventilation hood with zip ties and prayer. I passed inspection on the 3rd try. I started parking that truck outside office parks in East Memphis during the lunch hour. Pulled pork sandwiches, smoked chicken plates, mac and cheese made from Ruth's recipe. Word spread, not fast, slow, 1 plate at a time. Within 18 months, I had weekend catering gigs, church reunions, graduation parties, small weddings where the bride's budget was tight, but the food had to be right. By year 3, I rented a commissary kitchen on Summer Avenue and hired 2 part-time cooks. By year 7, my company, Southern Comfort Catering, was pulling in $312,000 a year. I had contracts for corporate events, Shelby County government functions, 3 recurring monthly clients who auto-renewed without even tasting the menu anymore because they trusted me. I had 2 refrigerated vans, a commercial smoker worth more than my first apartment, and a reputation across the Mid-South that I'd built 1 handshake at a time. Then there was Darren, my cousin, 31. Darren had floated between jobs his whole adult life: car detailing, warehouse work, a brief stint selling insurance that lasted maybe 2 months. He'd show up at family cookouts with a new polo shirt and a new pitch about his next big move. None of them ever moved. He made comments about my business, too. Must be nice playing with food for a living. And my personal favorite, said right to my face at Thanksgiving with a mouthful of my turkey, "You're 1 bad month from foldin', cuz." His mother, my Aunt Patricia, was a different story. She'd helped me with childcare years ago when I was working doubles and had nobody else. I owed her. She knew I owed her, and she never let me forget it. Darren just needs a chance, Janelle. He's family. He's smart when he applies himself. Then I got diagnosed with gallstones. My doctor at Methodist Lebanon scheduled surgery and told me I'd need 6 weeks to recover. 6 weeks away from my business. My 2 cooks could handle the food, but neither one had bookkeeping experience. I needed someone to manage vendor payments, invoices, supply orders. Darren had just finished a QuickBooks course at Southwest Tennessee Community College. Aunt Patricia practically got on her knees. "He won't let you down, Janelle. I promise you." So I added Darren as a temporary signer on the business account. I handed him the vendor contact list, the payment schedule, and the passwords. And I checked into Methodist Le Bonheur for surgery. Not knowing I'd wake up to find out my cousin had already started dismantling everything I'd spent 7 years building. The surgery went fine. Recovery was the hard part. I was on painkillers that made the room swim, and I couldn't lift anything over 10 pounds for 6 weeks. Couldn't stand long enough to cook a meal. Couldn't drive for the first 2 weeks. I lay on my couch in my apartment off Poplar Avenue and stared at the ceiling and told myself everything was going to be okay because Darren had it handled. And for the first 2 weeks he did. Or he made it look like he did. He sent me photos of invoices he'd paid, texted updates about deliveries. Cisco order came in, all good. Paid the linen company, receipt attached. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. Maybe Aunt Patricia was right. Maybe Darren just needed someone to trust him with real responsibility. Then the text slowed. Week 3, I was lying in bed at 2 in the morning, and my phone buzzed. A notification from my bank app. A transfer of $12,000 to an account number I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped before my brain even caught up. I called Darren. No answer. Called again. Voicemail. I texted him. Darren, there's a transfer I didn't authorize. Call me back now. He replied 4 hours later. Chill, it's a vendor deposit. New supplier. I got it handled. I wanted to believe him. I was still in pain, still barely able to stand long enough to shower without holding the wall. So I let it go. I told myself he wouldn't do that. He's family. Aunt Patricia promised. Week 5, I dragged myself to the commissary kitchen on Summer Avenue. I hadn't been there in over a month. I pulled into the back lot, and the first thing I noticed was space. Too much space. One of my refrigerated vans was gone. I walked around the building. The commercial smoker was gone. My Lang 84 Deluxe. I'd saved 14 months to buy that smoker. It was the centerpiece of every job I booked. My cook Marcus met me at the back door. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Miss Janelle, I didn't know how to tell you. Darren said you sold the equipment. Said you were closing down. He had some guys come with a flatbed 2 weeks ago. I asked him twice if you knew, and he said you signed off on it. My knees buckled. I grabbed the prep counter and held on. I pulled up my bank app with one hand. The business account balance read $411.16. 6 weeks earlier, the day I went into surgery, that account held over $91,000. I drove straight to Darren's apartment in Raleigh, still in pain, still stitched up. I shouldn't have been driving at all. I pounded on his door until he opened it. He was wearing a new jacket, new shoes. He leaned against the door frame with his arms crossed, like I was bothering him. Where is my money, Darren? What money? $87,000 is gone from my account. My smoker is gone. My van is gone. Where is it? I made some business decisions while you were out. You left me in charge, remember? I left you to pay invoices, not to sell my equipment, not to empty my account. He shrugged, actually shrugged, looked me dead in my face and said, you were never going to make it long-term anyway, Janelle. I just sped things up. That little food truck dream was on borrowed time. You stole from me. I took what was owed. You think I was going to work for free? Family discount doesn't mean family slave. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Not in front of him. I turned around, got back in my car, gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles ached and my surgical incision burned. And I called the one person I trusted more than anyone on this earth. Tamika answered on the second ring. My voice cracked for the first time since I'd woken up from anesthesia. He took everything, Tam. All of it. She said 4 words. Don't touch anything. I'm coming. Tamika Robinson, 33, my best friend since 7th grade at Ridgeway Middle School. She was a paralegal at a law firm on Front Street downtown. She was methodical and sharp, and she was the kind of friend who showed up with a legal pad instead of tissues. By that evening, she was sitting at my kitchen table with her laptop open, pulling every bank transfer record she could access, flagging every unauthorized withdrawal with a yellow highlighter. Within 48 hours, Tamika had mapped out every dollar Darren had moved. And what she found was worse than I'd imagined. Because my cousin hadn't just stolen from me once. He'd been draining the account in calculated increments from the very first week. Tamika worked through the night, By morning, she had 6 weeks of bank statements laid out across my kitchen table like a crime scene diagram. 17 separate unauthorized transfers. $87,500. Gone. Split across 3 different accounts. Darren's personal checking at Regions Bank. A prepaid card account registered to an address in Fraser. And a Zelle linked to an email that Tamika traced back to Darren's girlfriend, Keisha. The transfers weren't random. They were calculated. He started small, $800 the first week, then $1,500, then $3,000, testing me, seeing if I'd notice. By week 4, when I was too drugged up and too trusting to check, he moved $12,000 in a single day. Then the text surfaced. Darren's own cousin on his mother's side, a woman named Crystal, who never liked him much, forwarded me a group chat screenshot. Darren bragging to Keisha. His exact words. Finally getting my cut. She thinks she's better than everybody with that little business. Watch me eat off this for months. I read that message sitting on my couch with surgical tape still on my stomach, and I felt something go cold in my chest. Not sadness, not even anger yet, just a door closing. Whatever Darren was to me before, he was something else now. Tamika tracked the buyer of my smoker and refrigerated van to Little Rock, Arkansas, a man named Curtis who ran a barbecue pop-up. He'd paid Darren $14,000 cash for equipment worth 4 times that. Tamika found the bill of sale. Darren had forged my signature, misspelled my middle name, wrote Janelle instead of Janelle. Couldn't even steal from me correctly. 3 of my corporate clients confirmed Darren had contacted them directly, told them Southern Comfort Catering was permanently closed effective immediately, suggested they find new vendors. 2 had already signed with competitors by the time I found out. Contracts I'd spent years building. Gone because my cousin picked up the phone and lied. On top of everything, my business credit line at First Tennessee Bank had been maxed out. $22,000. Darren had drawn cash advances against it using the account access I'd given him. Access I'd given him to pay invoices for a produce supplier and a linen company, not to bleed me dry. Aunt Patricia called that night. I thought maybe she was calling to apologize, to say she didn't know, to say she was horrified. She was furious. At me. You're really going to do this to your own blood? Darren made a mistake, Janelle, but you're about to ruin his life over some money. It's $87,000, Aunt Patricia, and felony theft. You've always thought you were too good for this family. I hung up. I didn't call her back. Darren changed his story 3 times that week. First, it was business decisions. Then he claimed I'd verbally promised him 30% of the company. Then he told family members my business was already failing and he was trying to salvage what he could. Each lie more desperate than the last. Each one told with that same shrug, that same smirk I've been watching since we were kids. He even showed up at the commissary one evening while my cook Marcus was prepping for a job. Told Marcus to stop working for a sinking ship. Said I'd come around once I calmed down. Marcus told him to leave and texted me before Darren's car was out of the parking lot. Tamika connected me with an attorney at her firm. His name was James Webb. He took the case on partial contingency after reviewing the evidence for less than an hour. He looked at me across his desk and said, "This isn't a family disagreement, Janelle. This is textbook felony theft and forgery. The paper trail is airtight." They filed a police report with the Shelby County Sheriff's Office. Not just for the money, for the forged signatures. That elevated everything. But a court case wouldn't feed my clients next week. I had 3 contracts left. A monthly corporate lunch for a logistics company in Collierville. A recurring order for a church in Germantown. A standing weekend gig at a community center in Midtown. If I lost those, Southern Comfort Catering was dead for real. And Darren would have been right. That's when Gerald showed up. Gerald Hutchins, 62 years old, retired executive chef. He'd run the kitchen at the Peabody Hotel for 23 years. He'd mentored me back when I was just a woman with a broken food truck and a dream I couldn't afford. He'd tasted my grandmother's peach cobbler recipe and told me, "Girl, you've got something real. Don't you dare quit." When he heard what Darren did, he drove his pickup to my commissary the next morning, pulling a flatbed trailer. On it, his personal smoker, 2 commercial coolers, a set of hotel pans he'd kept from his Peabody days. He handed me the keys and said, "Use it as long as you need. You can pay me back by not letting that fool win." With borrowed equipment and 3 contracts holding on by a thread, I fired up Gerald's smoker at 4 in the morning and got back to work. Because while Darren thought he'd buried me, the Shelby County District Attorney's Office had just opened a criminal investigation with his name at the top of the file. The criminal case moved faster than Darren expected. The Shelby County DA charged him with felony theft, over $10,000, forgery, and fraudulent use of a credit instrument. His public defender tried to negotiate a plea, restitution in exchange for reduced charges. James Webb and the prosecutor shut it down. The evidence was too clean, too complete. 17 wire transfers, forged signatures, text messages in his own words. There was nothing to negotiate. On the day of sentencing, I sat in the second row of a Shelby County courtroom, wearing the same chef's coat I'd worn to my very first catering gig. White with grease stains I could never fully get out. Tamika sat beside me with a legal pad on her lap. Gerald was 2 rows back with his arms folded across his chest, like a man who'd come to watch something get settled. Darren stood before Judge Carolyn Mitchell in a borrowed suit that didn't fit. The sleeves were too long. His attorney asked for leniency, called it a family misunderstanding that escalated. Judge Mitchell looked at the evidence binder on her bench, 6 inches thick. Then she looked at Darren. "Mr. Simmons, this was not a misunderstanding. This was a calculated, sustained theft from a family member who trusted you during a medical emergency. You forged documents. You liquidated assets. You deliberately destroyed her client relationships. This court does not take that lightly." Full restitution, $87,500, plus $23,000 in compensatory damages for lost contracts and credit damage. 3 years probation, 200 hours of community service, barred from holding fiduciary access to any business account, and a felony conviction on his permanent record. With that felony, Darren couldn't pass a background check to open a basic checking account at any major bank. He turned around once, looking for his mother. Aunt Patricia was in the back row, crying into a tissue. Then he looked at me. I didn't look away. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just held his gaze until he turned back around. Outside the courthouse, Tamika squeezed my hand. "It's done." I shook my head. "No. Now the real work starts again." The conviction rippled through the family the way these things do. Aunt Patricia stopped speaking to me entirely. Told relatives I'd destroyed her son's future. A few cousins took her side, called me cold for pressing criminal charges against blood. But most of the family, especially the older ones who remembered Grandmother Ruth, sided with me quietly. My Uncle Vernon pulled me aside at a gathering and said, "Ruth would have done the same thing. You don't let people steal your life's work and call it love." Darren's girlfriend, Keisha, left him within a month. The Zelle account she'd received funds in got flagged during the investigation, and she barely avoided charges herself. Last I heard, Darren was living with a friend in South Haven, Mississippi, working odd jobs for cash. No employer would touch him with a fresh felony. 5 months after the conviction, Aunt Patricia called me. Her voice was different, smaller, tired. She didn't apologize exactly, but she said, "I know what he did was wrong. I just didn't want to see my son go through this." I listened. I let the silence sit. Then I told her, "I didn't want this either, Aunt Patricia, but he didn't give me a choice." There was a long pause. Then she said, "Your grandmother would have been proud of you, baby." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't closure. But it was the first honest thing she'd said in months. I held on to it. Darren never called, never wrote. I didn't expect him to. 18 months after the theft, Southern Comfort Catering was back. Not just recovered, stronger. The restitution payments came in slow but steady, garnished from whatever income Darren managed to scrape together. I used the $23,000 in damages to put a down payment on my own commissary space on Park Avenue. No more renting. I hired a full-time bookkeeper. I bought a new Lang smoker, paid cash. Gerald's equipment was cleaned and polished and returned to his garage with a handwritten thank you note and a lifetime supply of peach cobbler. I landed a contract with the Memphis Grizzlies front office for pregame hospitality events. My revenue by the end of that year hit $420,000. Marcus got a raise and the title of head cook. Tamika got a standing order of brisket every Sunday, no charge, for life. Darren told me I was never going to make it long term, that he just sped things up. And you know what? He was half right. He did speed something up. He sped up the moment I stopped trusting people with my business out of guilt and started trusting myself completely. I came from a food truck and a grandmother's recipe. I'll be here long after his name is forgotten. And if you're out there right now, rebuilding something someone tried to take from you, keep going. The smoker's still hot.